And it should be recording now. A couple other announcements before we start. Your contact information is protected and we will never share or publicize it outside of this event and outside of the Health Tree Foundation. I should be specific about that. During this event, for those that feel comfortable, we ask that you keep your cameras on. It helps us connect to real people and feel like we are talking to others and not just screens. So if you feel comfortable, please keep your camera on and your microphone muted. If you don't feel comfortable having your camera on, no pressure. As previously mentioned, all mics will be muted unless you are voluntarily called upon during our open forums. And lastly, I just wanted to remind you that you should consult your healthcare team for all medical advice. The information shared here today should not replace in any way the advice of your treating physician and team. Before we formally begin, I would like to thank our sponsors, without whom this event would not be possible. Those sponsors are AbbVie, Bristol Myers Squibb, Amgen Oncology, Genentech, Karyopharm Therapeutics, Oncopeptides, Adaptive Biotechnologies, and Takeda Oncology. And with those announcements made, it is now my pleasure to turn the time over to Todd and Diane Kennedy for tonight's event. So take it away, guys.
Todd, you're muted.
Now I'm not. Now we'll just share the screen again. Hang on 1 minute. Sorry. There we go. Now you can hear me, and I think you should be able to see the slides. So thanks, Audrey. Welcome, everybody. It looks like we've got over about 33 people on board, which is a terrific start. We're so pleased to have you here and just be able to get further connected as a Southern California myeloma community. My name's Todd. As Audrey said, I'm joined by my wife, Diane. Just to get you to know us a little bit, we've been married for 31 years. We have 2 sons. We live in Orange County for the last 23 years. And it's nice really to be working together with a SoCal chapter because we've lived in San Luis Obispo to the north and San Diego to the south, and we have family throughout. So we're very connected to the whole Southern California area. And I'll start by telling you my myeloma journey started the day after Christmas 2017 when I got that just horrible news that you have myeloma. And I started treatment 3 years ago on my 53rd birthday. And thankfully, under the care of Dr. Amrita Krishnan at City of Hope, I'm in remission. And despite myeloma, Diane and I feel like we are really living a great life. And one of the things that gives us really terrific joy is coaching and connecting with other myeloma patients. And we aren't medical professionals. We're just a patient and a caregiver that are committed to giving back by volunteering to support the myeloma community. And when Jenny and Audrey asked us to lead this chapter, we said, well, let's do it. So let's do it. So let's start with the agenda. First, we're going to share some thoughts on the unmet need in our community and what we hope to accomplish together through this community chapter. And we'll keep this interactive. As Audrey said, we'll be doing some polling questions. And then we'll share some interesting analysis from the Health Tree Cure Hub database, which I think is going to help us understand the state of myeloma care in Southern California. And that'll illuminate some of the needs in our region. And then we'll share some of our suggestions and solicit your important input on key clinical highlights, resources, and events that I think we might all find helpful. And then finally, as Audrey said, we're going to wrap it up with this after meeting virtual mingle. I know that sometimes the most valuable connections and conversations happen after the meeting in the hallway or in the parking lot or over a cup of coffee. And we're going to leave the webinar platform on, but turn off the recording so people across the region maybe able to share contact information, ask questions you didn't get to ask during the open forum, et cetera. So that's our agenda, but let's start with discussing why we think this virtual myeloma community chapter is important. So here in Southern California, we're of course very, very fortunate to have many outstanding myeloma experts and cancer centers and support groups. But as you can imagine, we have a very large and growing number of people with myeloma in Southern California, and they're very diverse. They're spread throughout our 11 counties, and there's a significant number in Southern Nevada that also come to SoCal. And this table contains census data as well as CDC data. and it shows the overall population and number of patients that are newly diagnosed with myeloma each year in each of our 11 Southern California counties. And that totals about 1,424 new patients in Southern California, and that's in addition to the thousands of others living with this disease. And I know that by you attending today, I know that you believe in the value of support groups, yet despite the existence of about 13 really terrific local support groups, it's our belief that the significant majority of myeloma patients are not connected in any meaningful way. And there could be a variety of reasons, maybe just awareness or access, convenience, perceived value, general fit. And we're hopeful that this interactive virtual format that we're trying to make as much like a real life experience as possible will help facilitate some connections and amplify the impact of all the groups in our area. So Myeloma Crowd Cure in 5 initiative was just released just a couple days ago for Myeloma Action Month, and it's another reason why our SoCal community chapter is so important. And you're going to get these slides, and I would ask you to read the full press release that Jenny wrote this story, and it's really, really compelling. But in summary, with a larger number of effective therapies in our myeloma arsenal, myeloma is becoming a chronic condition for many patients. And this is terrific news, and we're so grateful. But ultimately, the cure is our ultimate goal, getting cures and even better therapeutics. And the Cure in 5 initiative highlights 5 steps to accelerate curative strategies for myeloma. And we're actually taking many of these steps today, and we'll continue to do so during future meetings. And the steps are: build and grow the myeloma community, educate and empower the community, share your story and experiences, participate in and help fund research, discover new insights, and draw new conclusions. So with that need to connect a huge number of myeloma patients throughout these 11 counties and unite each other, educate each other, and just strengthen our Southern California myeloma community and hopefully accelerate the arrival of our cures, let me share with you now our community charter. 2 slides and I'll start with the overarching goal. It's straightforward. It's improve the lives of Southern California region patients living with myeloma and precursor conditions and their caregivers by strengthening our community, by expanding the patient caregiver outreach, again, letting more and more of these people, bring them in, find ways to get them connected as deeply as possible across the region and within each county and each cancer center. And having this encouraging, connected myeloma community that's thinking about what's the matter with the patient. In other words, what's the diagnosis and treatment? That's oftentimes what our doctors are thinking about, but also being mindful of what matters to the patient. Those are psychosocial issues, supportive care, financial matters, just living with myeloma. The second bullet is really about building synergy across all the myeloma support groups, organizations, and allied stakeholders. We see this as a convenient, ongoing supplement to existing support groups in the Southern California region. Remember, cancer is the competition. In no way do we see competition between the various organizations that have as their core mission to support patients and drive research towards a cure. So it's complementary, it's supplemental, and cancer remains the competition. And this will be a primarily virtual format, supplemented by live local events. We know that some of the other support groups will probably go back to a live format. So we think the ongoing offering of a virtual format makes a whole lot of sense. The next bullet is about accelerating the arrival of cures and treatments by expanding awareness and access to clinical trials and registries in our area. And then the second slide of our charter reads that we're going to enhance awareness and access to really exceptional regional, national clinical experts, information resources, programs, and events, and exchange ideas between groups, really amplify the best practices that are happening in each and every one of these counties and these different organizations. One thing that'll also, I think, be very, very helpful is that we're going to be using HealthTree Cure Hub data to understand and support the real-world needs of the myeloma community. And that is really going to be, I think, something that's going to stand out about and make this especially powerful for those of us that participate. And then the final point of this charter is focusing in on hope and action, ensuring that every meeting that you attend includes some actionable insights and suggestions. Maybe you'll walk away with some information to discuss with your myeloma expert, And hopefully you'll have some deepened connections within the local myeloma community. Maybe you'll have a new friend that you didn't know. Maybe they were in your support group. Maybe it's somebody that lives 2 counties away, but you connect. And I think over time, we will deepen those connections. So that's our charter. And now I want to turn it over to my beautiful wife, best friend, and compassionate caregiver, Diane. And she's going to lead us through our next section where we're going to get to know our SoCal myeloma community a bit better. Diane.
Right. I'm really glad we're recording that so I can get that little clip back. Okay. I want to spend a few minutes speaking about the support and resources we have here in Southern California region. And I'm going to start with the Myeloma Coach Program. We have at least 3 or 4 and maybe as many as 5 myeloma coaches on this call tonight who live here in Southern California. And I've listed the names there. You can see those people. And then there's an additional 5 to 6 coaches who live in the region as well, some of whom aren't taking new coaching requests right now due to their caseload, but that changes frequently. This coaching program is an amazing resource and a way for you to speak with someone who really knows what you're going through. This is especially true when you're first diagnosed, but coaching can be helpful throughout your myeloma journey, whether you have a change in your treatment or you want more input about clinical trials or help with financial resources. So I encourage you to check out the Myeloma Coach website. And you do not have to work with a coach who lives in your region. You just read the profiles and find someone who's a good match for you. Todd and I do a lot of joint coaching. We meet together with the patient and their caregiver or caregivers on a conference call or a Zoom call. It all depends on what people want. I've also listed here Diana Valentine. She leads the myeloma financial chapter. So if you're looking for help in that area, she's great as a one-on-one coach if you reach out to her, or you may want to attend one of her virtual financial chapter meetings. And if you're interested in becoming a myeloma coach, you check out the website there. I provided the link. It'd be great to have coaches from every county and every cancer center. And based on the newly diagnosed stats that Todd just shared, we know the need is real. You don't have to be an expert, that's for sure. Todd and I have actually made some wonderful friends through the coaching program that we connected with. And beyond HealthCree's coaching program, the Multiple Myeloma Research Foundation, the MMRF, has a patient navigator line and a myeloma mentor program, which are also fabulous resources. And I know we're going to be using a lot of acronyms, and for some of you, these are super familiar, but I wanted to provide this slide just because you're going to hear about these organizations that are all great resources that you should check out. So HealthTree, we're going to hear more on Cure Club and the University, HealthTree University, Myeloma Crowd is who coordinates these chapter events and a host of other webinars and programs throughout the year. And we have also just spoke about the myeloma coaches. And then there's IMF, and they are a terrific organization who have many support groups throughout the region. In fact, I think the IMF's Orange County support group leader, Jackie's on this call, I think. And IMF groups typically meet once a month in person, but due to the pandemic, they've gone virtual. So please check out their website and you can find a group that's near you. And in addition, there's MMRF and LLS and great organizations such as All for Cure and others that are available at the various cancer centers. So my point in all of this is you are not alone. We have lots of resources here in our community. So now I'd like to spend a few minutes getting to know who's on this call. When we originally planned this meeting, we were thinking we'd have maybe 10 to 15 people who would be on, and we'd all, introduce ourselves, and that quickly changed, and we knew that wasn't going to work with as many people that are on the call. So Audrey's going to help us with polling, and she'll walk us through the process so we can take some polls to kind of get an idea of who's joined us tonight.
Awesome. Thank you, Diane. So again, I'll just walk you through how we get to the polls as I launch our first 2 polls. It's actually just 1 poll, but it wouldn't let us put all of the counties in the same poll. So if you go to the top of your screen, and unfortunately, again, this can only be done on a computer, not on a mobile phone, but you'll be able to go to that top right corner, there's a white bar. To the left of the time is a small circle, square, triangle icon. If you hover over it, it says activities. If you click that button, and then it will show a list of activities, click polls, and you should be able to access those polls and take them. If you don't have access to the polls, not sure where to find it, you can also include in the chat where you are from, if you feel comfortable doing so. Obviously, you do not have to.
And the polls only let us have 10, so we have more counties represented here tonight, so we divided them into 2. So if you don't see your county in that first one, go down to the second question and answer there.
Yeah.
Hopefully we've covered everything.
And I think, Audrey, I'm not sure, you might need to share your screen then to launch the poll. Is that right?
No, I think it's launched. I think people are
it's launched.
taking it. If I share my screen, it becomes like this vortex of like.
Oh, I'm sorry.
sharing,
Yes.
sharing.
Got it.
No, it's okay. I've tried it before and it didn't turn out pretty. So
Yeah.
Got
don't
it. Got it.
scare people. So this is great. It looks like we have people from all over. We have people from Santa Barbara, Ventura. I'm not sure how you Californians say these, so I might be butchering it. But Los Angeles, Orange, San Diego. This is exciting to have people from all over. This is great.
Yeah, we can't see the
Oh
staff.
my gosh, I'm so sorry. I thought those were. Let me show you
There we
guys.
go. Yeah, that
Thank you for letting me know. So you should be able to see the votes. And again, these votes
Oh,
are.
that's better. Yes. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So sorry about that. Thank you for reminding me. This is great. All right, so we can keep that one live while we move on to the next one. If that's okay with you guys?
Sure.
perfect.
Awesome. So this next one is, are you an active member of a SoCal Myeloma Support Group? So I will be launching that one and you can be answering. We just kind of wanted to, actually Diane and Todd, you're the one that came up with this. So if you want to explain the reasoning behind that as people vote today.
Just again, we have with so many people, if you have 13 active, if there's about 13 groups that were traditionally meeting live and you're looking at about maybe 15, maybe 30 people on a regular basis going to those meetings, maybe we're touching about 400 myeloma patients through groups when we have thousands,
Right.
So we really wanted to know, are people joining this and also joining those others? We just need to know, are people getting connected and how are they getting connected?
That's awesome. It's so fun to, I think personally, it's so fun to see just real-time results because that helps us get to know each other better as well.
And I'm glad no one selected the last one.
I thought it was a fun choice to put in.
And I like the fact that people are looking for additional opportunities as well as looking for a convenient option. I know so many of us are so busy, it's very difficult sometimes, even if you have one in your county, to get it to the other side of the county at 6 o'clock on a Wednesday night with the rest of life happening. So this is encouraging to me, and it suggests that there is a need for a format like we're offering here today.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you for voting.
All right, so we'll move on to the next couple. And again, these are split into two because it only gave us 10 options and we had more than 10. But these are, which SoCal region support groups do you attend most frequently? So I'll be launching those right now. And again, I'm keeping all the rest of them live if you need to participate in ones that were earlier. So this one, it looks like quite a bit of people. We had quite a bit of people say they are not a part of a support group. So this might not apply to you, but if it does apply to you, feel free to vote of what SoCal region support group you are attending most frequently. Excuse me.
And I see the votes already coming in from San Diego. I know you've got a terrific program down there. And we used to live in San Diego. If I had myeloma and I was still in San Diego, I'd be going, as well as attending every other great program I could get my ears and eyes on and people I could connect with. And then we've got delegates from the Orange County program too. It's very interesting too, as we're scrolling through this, when you think about, and I'll show you in a minute, the geographic distribution of patients, and especially some of those people in more outlying areas, as we see here, are not very connected at the current time, or at least they're not on our call today, you know. So
Not yet.
not yet.
Next meeting.
Go ahead, Audrey.
All right, we'll move on to this next one then, which is, what type of participant are you? So are you a patient? Are you a primary caregiver? Are you a patient and caregiver team? Because you might be attending one patient, one caregiver. Are you just a supporter in that community?
Yeah, we put the patient caregiver team because we know a lot of people do these calls jointly. So that covers it. If you're two.
Great.
This is so fun to see.
This will be very patient and caregiver centric. We definitely are focused on both sides of that teamwork.
Yeah, I think that's part of the strength of this group too, is the co-leads are patient and caregiver, right? So you have someone you can relate to. I think it's great. We'll again keep that one open and move on to our next question, which is, what is the status of your disease? It looks like we have, to go back onto that other one, it looks like we have quite a bit of patients here, primary caregivers and a couple patient and caregiver teams. So we're so glad that you're here. This is so exciting.
Yeah, for this next one, we just need patients to answer this. So if you're a caregiver, if the patient is on also, you don't need to answer. Otherwise, just one per party can answer. Otherwise, we'll wonder why our stats are all off.
Mm-hmm.
Some celebrations there for those in remission, and welcome especially to those. I certainly remember the time that I was newly diagnosed and trying to learn as much as possible. And then we've got some others that, you know, it's one of those inflection points where you're trying to figure out what's next. So we realize that every patient, you know, it's a long journey, and you go in and out of different stages of that journey, and do our best to support your needs no matter where you are in that. And Linda, I get your message. We see your messages in the chat too. So
That's
glad
great.
you're in remission too, and you're in the group. All right.
I'm so glad Linda's here. Linda's one of our coaches as well. She's awesome. All right. So the next question is going to be, how long has it been since your initial myeloma diagnosis? And there are quite a bit of options here. So hopefully we hit all of them. The Kennedys hit all of them. I think they did. I think they did a great job of just how they staged it.
Look at that.
Mm-hmm. That's fun. That's exciting.
That's awesome. There's some great stories and inspiration that I'm sure folks have to share that are in those, you know, tenured groups. And this is really nice to know what the mix is of our audience.
And I love that there is a mix. I love that there's, you know, ranging from 3 months to greater than 10 years.
Yeah.
And the nice part is we'll be able to share information that helps people along the whole spectrum.
That was our favorite thing. When Todd was first diagnosed, we would connect with people in the hallways at City of Hope. And it was so encouraging when we would hear the people that were 5 years out or 6 years out. And at that time when people were traveling, we met people that were, we're heading to Europe next week. We're having treatment, you know, so that we can be gone for 3 weeks. And it was like, oh, that was just so refreshing to hear as you're in the midst of it, going 2-3 times a week for treatment and things.
Yeah, that's actually a great leeway into our next question, which is, where do you receive your myeloma care? There are different options here. And again, the Kennedys did a great job at naming the main ones: City of Hope, UCLA, those are some common ones. And then we have other ones up there as well that I'm sure are common as well. And, ooh, this one's really fun because you're getting people all over.
Yeah.
And the Institute for Myeloma and Bone Cancer Research is Dr. Berenson.
Oh, I'm sorry if I missed that.
No.
No.
Just so people know, it's fine.
Great.
That's great.
All right, and then we'll keep that one open and open our last and final polling question. This has been so fun to poll and see real-time data. Thank you guys for participating with us. But this is, have you received your COVID-19 vaccine? So we're just trying to, I mean, you guys can explain it. I'm sorry, I keep trying to explain your questions.
It's of course on everybody's mind. So we just wanted to get a sense quickly of the audience. We got just a one slide resource suggestion for follow-up content that we'll reference later.
That's great. That's so many people.
Awesome. Awesome.
Great. So we are actually going to keep those polls open throughout the entire presentation, just in case anybody didn't participate and wants to participate, you know where to find them. But thank you guys for participating with us in that, and I'll turn the time back over to Todd and Diane.
All right, let me just get this loaded back. Yeah, thank you again. It's helpful to to learn more about the people on the webinar tonight. But in this section, we're going to learn, in fact, some of the people that are on this, including myself, are registered in the HealthTree Cure Hub database. So what we're going to do now is going to give you some insights into other people beyond just the group that's assembled here tonight that are in this very, very powerful data. So Todd, I'm going to introduce you and ask if you wouldn't mind taking a couple minutes just to tell the members here a little bit about HealthTree and specifically about Cure Hub.
Sure, thank you. Great to be here with you all. I know Todd said you'll probably stay virtual, but I'm in Utah and it's snowing, so I kind of wish we were all there. COVID wasn't a thing, and I was in Southern Utah or Southern California with you all. Anyway, it's great to see you all. So HealthTree Cure Hub, it's a place you can go to and have all your data in one place. When I was working at MD Anderson, on average, the patients there were seeing 3 different doctors at 3 different locations, and their data was all over the place. So with Cure Hub, it's a hub where you can go to put all of your data, and it can reside there, and you have access to it at any time you want. And then by doing that, we're able to provide some of the research that we're going to show you later, that Nathan's going to show you. We also give you some, help along the way. We show you treatment options that are personalized just for you that you would qualify to have. We get rid of those treatment options that don't apply to you, remove them so you don't have to spend time looking or wondering what they are. Same with clinical trials, show you clinical trials personalized just for you. We have a twin machine where you can find your genetic twins, your cancer's genetic twin, see what treatments they have had and if they worked or not to help you make treatment decisions. My lights just went down. We are launching next week a patient solutions tool where you can look up side effects and see what patients are doing to help alleviate their side effects, and you can see the data, the numbers of who it's working for and if it's not working, that sort of thing. There's lots within the Cure Hub to help you through your journey, and we're excited to be able to provide that for you. And then just real quick, just because a lot of people don't realize that everything that falls under the HealthTree umbrella, the Cure Hub is there that I've spoken about. The coaches program is part of that we've talked about. There's HealthTree University, which there's hundreds of videos, over 700, I believe, videos of myeloma specialists talking about all different subjects. so that you can get their perspective and learn more and be more knowledgeable about your decisions that you're making. And then we have the Myeloma Crowd as well, that's part of the Health Tree Foundation. So I could go on for a full hour, but that's a real quick overview of what we have to offer there with the Health Tree Cure Hub.
Thank you, Todd. And then there's thousands of people around the country that have entered their data into Health Tree Cure Hub. And you and Nathan were gracious enough to try and help us understand a subset of that national pool and look just at the SoCal Cure Hub patients. So thank you for spending that extra time to tap into that database and give us a snapshot of kind of the state of myeloma care in our Southern California area. So this slide represents the geographic distribution of the 372 SoCal region patients that are participating in the Cure Hub, and a significant number in our main cities, as you could imagine. But also we've got other people that are, again, as we know, they're spread throughout the Southern California region. So there are Cure Hub participants also throughout all 11 counties. And sorry if there are people from the Vegas area, I didn't expand this part of the analysis to your geography, but we can definitely get to that in a future call. You know, the national average on myeloma diagnosis is 70 years old. And here you can see the mix of patients in the Cure Hub SoCal database. And although in total, we're close to the average, it's kind of interesting to note the diversity in age. And I think that suggests the need for different approaches to engage and connect with different age groups. So the 55 or 60 and younger group on the left may have different preferences and needs for what information and how they receive it versus that older population. And 53% of those SoCal Cure Hub patients are female, 47% are male. And on the race side, of those that chose to disclose their race, 85% indicated white. And it's important for the myeloma community, including scientists, I think, though, to understand myeloma across all races. And therefore, it would be really helpful for everyone to complete their profiles. And a particular note is the low percentage of African Americans reporting. And there is a high incidence in that population. So really love to make sure we get that population encouraged to participate in the Cure Hub. It's often suggested that one of the most valuable actions a myeloma patient can take is to get a myeloma expert, somebody with that real deep expertise on your care team. And here's a snapshot of where the SoCal Cure Hub patients are receiving their care. And they may be receiving care from a myeloma center or a combination approach between that expert center and then the local hem-onc. But this is the split. Some, these are probably not too surprising and pretty consistent with where people were going. And we saw in our poll just moments ago. And this slide is a snapshot of treatments in that SoCal subgroup. And if they had reported it or if it was in their medical records. Of course, Dex is dominant in so many ways, not only in use, but dominant in life too, I suppose. And of the IMiDs, it's as expected, Revlimid's most common, but you can also see use of Pomalyst. And of the proteasome inhibitors, as expected, Velcade's at top, but patients are using Kyprolis as well. And Darzalex is about 9.7% when we put the injection and FastPro together. And we also see use of newer agents like Ninlaro, Implicity, Venclexta, and Sarclisa. So interesting mix. There are patients in this database that are taking the same drugs that all of us are. And I think that's encouraging. And then it's not on the slide, but I'll point out that of those that reported their treatment, 78% have received a stem cell transplant, at least one. Most of the time one, but 78% have had a transplant, 22% have not had a transplant. And I think this is a real encouraging slide, and it's not survival data. This is the time since diagnosis. So don't look over here and say that, oh my gosh, I'm looking at this and these people only lived 4 years. This isn't like the survival slide you might have seen. This is just people that have signed up for the Cure Hub. And there are people in here that have, are newly diagnosed. There are people that have been in here for 10 plus years and still going. And I think as we begin to continue to make more and more connections across the region, it's really nice to be able to either virtually or literally reach out and hold these people's hands in the early stages of the disease and do the same across the other side of the scale when you're looking at people that are 24 years since diagnosis. Look at all the people that are in the Cure Hub database in Southern California that are 10 plus years survivors. I'm looking forward to meeting some of these living legends myself. Just a couple more slides on this too. I think it's really important that we understand our specific genetics and how that relates to standard or high risk. And in the database for SoCal, 76% of the profiles don't include this information. And that can be tough to enter it. It might just not be in the record. Like we saw in that video before we started, a lot of times this stuff is not tied in as well. And sometimes it's just in the patient's head. Cure Hub can help consolidate that and get it captured. But of those with data, most had standard risk, but there were about 7% that are considered high risk. And on the left, you see a chart of the genetic mutations in this SoCal subgroup. And I put little pyramids next to, or triangles next to those mutations that are considered high risk by the International Myeloma Working Group. So those are 1q gain, deletion 17p, translocation 414, 1416, and 1420. And I know that's a lot to remember. And if you have 2 or 3 of those, it's even higher risk. And it's complicated. It's a bunch. This is kind of like myeloma 201 or 301. But there are really good resources to get you up to speed, and understanding your genetic risk is really, really very important. And in just a little bit, we'll show you where you can find some of that great content on HealthTree University. Just a couple more. One of these was very interesting, looking at the subgroup in SoCal. Many of the participants did not answer the question, did you ever receive an MRD test? And that may indicate that they're not fully informed on the topic. And those that responded, 26% reported that they had a test, 47% said they had not, 26% weren't sure. And I think, to me, the data suggests that there's a need for some additional information on the topic of MRD. And again, we'll give you a reference to some of the great content on HealthTree University on the topic of MRD. Now, in the last 2 slides, I'm shifting gears a little bit and going to focus on a few metrics that are kind of related to just living life with myeloma. And despite the challenges, I love this, that 64% are demonstrating their resilience, and they report that they enjoy life very much or quite a bit. And that is awesome. And with that said, though, there's 36% that are indicating that this disease has had quite an impact on their quality of life. And hopefully, as a myeloma community, we can come together and help each other out, live life to the fullest. And then the last slide in this analysis is a compliment and a thanks to the caregivers and friends, because on the left side, 84% of this SoCal subgroup reports that they feel very close or quite close to their partner or main supporter. And I think that many of you are going to agree that one of the real blessings of the myeloma journey is how it can bring you closer to the ones you love. And what a silver lining that is in the whole course of this disease. And on the right side, 62% report they get quite a bit or very much support from their friends. And it's not quite as high as the partner and the caregiver relationship, but perhaps, by building new friendships across this myeloma community, we can provide more understanding and support to one another. I know that since I was diagnosed over 3 years ago, one of the most beautiful things has been the new friends I've made along the way. And I am so, so thankful for those friends now in my life. And I'm hoping through, reaching out across all 11 counties, new friendships will be made through this virtual Southern California myeloma community. So at this point, we'd love to just open up the lines, take a few minutes to get your reaction to what we've shared thus far on the polling and the Cure Hub analysis that I just showed you. Audrey, can you remind everybody how they can either chat or open up and also be able to just speak up? We'll open the lines here for a good 10 minutes and have an interactive discussion amongst everybody on the call.
Yeah, of course. And thank you again for showing that. And thank you again to Nathan and his team for creating that. That's just amazing. In order to keep order, what we're going to be doing is using the raise hand feature of Google Meet. So if you have something that you'd like to say, you have a question, you have a comment, or you even just have a comment specifically about a need, unmet needs revealed, or something about what you've seen, you can use the raise hand feature. If you go down to the bottom of your screen, whether you're on a phone or whether you're on a desktop computer, there is a raise hand icon that you can click, and we will be calling on the first 5 people to raise their hand. We do have to keep, we respect your time is what I'm trying to say. And let me just say, I love the chat, what's going on, you know, asking, oh, whose doctor do you go to? You know, we've had a question that we'll start with, and then we'll get to the raised hands. Cynthia had the question, has anybody else had an allo transplant? And I think, Cynthia, that puts you in, you know, allo transplants are obviously more rare now than auto. So that would be interesting to know if anybody else had an allo transplant along with their auto. You can write in the chat, Cynthia, if you are a recipient of an allo. And then we'll get started with those raised hands. So Paul Ahlstrom, if you want to unmute yourself, you can say your comment or question.
I just wanted to thank Todd and Diane for stepping up and leading the support group. That's with everything going on in your lives, that shows a great commitment to your community. I want to show my appreciation for that. Was delighted to meet you guys in person, probably the last possible day before the COVID shutdown. We were, I don't even remember where we were. I think it was Southern California. It was warm.
San Diego.
San Diego.
San Diego.
And everybody was like, what? It was like we were wondering if we're going to get home on a plane or not. It was like the last possible day people met in person. So it's nice to see your face again.
Yeah.
We're
It was so
thankful
great.
to be here.
Yeah, so great to, that was, we had kind of debated because, you know, COVID was kind of starting and we're like, oh, what do we think? And it's like, well, let's go. And thank goodness we did, because then it, you know, shut down. We will, our last big event was with you all.
I look back to that moment. It was like the last hurrah, last plane flight. So,
Yeah.
and
You know, one of the, sorry,
Todd.
go ahead.
No. I'm a Southern California native. So I was born and raised in Los Alamitos in Orange County. Actually, I was born in Downey, California, at Downey Memorial Hospital, and I was lived in Woodstock Road in Los Alamitos, California, Rossmore, and my parents lived there for 30, 40 years. So, that's why we're crashing your Southern California support group, even though I'm living in Utah right now.
You are always welcome. You are always welcome. And, you know, I'm so glad you brought that meeting up, because although this is virtual and we hope to go back to live meetings, and hopefully we can replicate one of the key takeaways that I think Diane and I had coming out of that meeting, was that there are great organizations that support this community, but Myeloma Crowd is truly outstanding. And the reason it really resonated with us is because of Jenny, your leadership, and Paul, your leadership, and the entire staff. Not only was the content incredible, but I just felt a really strong personal connection that, you know, we are in this together as a founder that is a patient, and as a family that's dealing with this. It just really resonated, and we wanted to just help support your mission. So, and it's just a terrific thing. It was a pleasure to meet you, and we're encouraged to continue to bring more people into the overall myeloma community in Southern California.
Yeah, well, thank you. And one of the things that we started doing was, we had so many names out there. We tried to simplify the branding. So our organization is rebranding around Health Tree. We had the head of Facebook branding help us out, and many other experts, and we looked at everything we had and basically came back and so we're gonna come back and build branding around Health Tree. But the Myeloma Crowd has such a following, we can't ever get rid of it. So it'll always be there. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
I would echo, thank you, Todd and Diane, for doing this. I think it's fantastic. And I'm crashing too. I grew up in San Jose, but.
Oh,
All right, so you have a question. So Mary Ritchie asks, my husband's oncologist and the Sinai expert both say treatment decisions or drug choices aren't based on genetics. So what is the reason for genetics to be done?
Well, I mean, again, as we stated in the outset, I am not a medical expert. I can only give you my opinion. But sometimes genetics do make a big impact because in my particular case, my translocation is 1114. And if you've been following the science, for patients that have the 1114 translocation, venetoclax works exceptionally well. It's where there's a tremendous amount of enthusiasm about kind of this concept of precision medicine and understanding somebody's genetics and then using a specific agent based on that genetic profile. And venetoclax is probably the hallmark case of that. And about 30% or maybe 20% of the patients do have that particular genetic mutation. I think where some have told me that it's helpful is that it might not necessarily change what drugs you use, but it might change the combination. It might change the dosage. It might change the timing of when you do certain things, how diligent you are around the degree, the frequency of monitoring, the use of MRD and other things. So it would be considered standard to get the genetic testing and know that. And even if there aren't that many actionable targets even today beyond the one I mentioned, the way that the science is evolving so rapidly, it's fully expected that there will be more targets and that information will be helpful. I don't know if anybody else wants to weigh in on that question.
That's a great answer. Can we have Jenny unmute? And Jenny's interviewed 150 myeloma specialists on 150 radio programs. I got to think that you're going to have an opinion on this, Jenny.
And the question, I heard Todd, Todd talking about the genetics, how it's important to decision making, but what was the specific question again?
The specific question was that her husband's oncologist and the Cedars-Sinai expert both say treatment decisions or drug choices aren't based on genetics. So what is the reason for genetics to be done?
They are. This question makes me crazy. Because in 2010, I went to a really great IMF patient and family seminar, and I asked everybody to raise their hand if they understood their genetic features, and probably 5% of patients raised their hands. They had no clue. My doctor, when I was diagnosed back in 2010, said, if you don't understand the enemy, how are you going to win the war? And what you need to know is what you are dealing with at onset, and then what are you dealing with at relapse? Because the genetic features that you have may not be the same during those time points. Your myeloma can morph and change. You can pick up genetic mutations over time with treatment. So when you get your bone marrow biopsy, at a minimum, you should be getting your FISH test, minimum. You can ask for other deeper genetic testing that are used more in the research, like the NGS testing, the next generation sequencing testing by Foundation Medicine or others. I know like Memorial Sloan, I don't know what City of Hope does, but I know Memorial Sloan Kettering has their own that can look at, different mutations. But it does matter. Like if you have high risk features, you can have a single high risk feature. You can have 2 high risk features. That's called double hit. And you can have triple hit, which is 3 high risk features together. So if you do that, number one, you never go off treatment because trying to get it back under control is awful. And you should, like if you have double hit myeloma or even a single mutation, you might want to hit it harder up front and not, some specialists have, or some doctors say, well, we're going to reserve stuff for later. We're not going to use everything up at the beginning because then you'll relapse and you might not have anything to try later. That's just totally not good if you have high risk features. So just give it all you got at the beginning because that first remission is going to be your best and longest lasting remission. And then you might have to jump into clinical trials earlier rather than later. So sorry, I'm really opinionated about that.
There's actually a follow-up question that we could probably answer as a part of this. Is it beneficial to get genetic testing when you're in remission?
No, you have nothing to test. So if you're in remission, that's why you should take a FISH test at a minimum before you start treatment. And a lot of patients, if they don't go see a specialist, because this happened to me too, it happens to almost everybody. You go to the general oncologist, you get the diagnosis, you don't know that there are specialists out there that you should be seeing. And the oncologist doesn't do the right testing. Like my oncologist didn't even do a bone marrow biopsy. And he's like, yeah, I think you have myeloma. Let's start you on treatment on Friday. Like, what the heck? That doesn't sound right to me. So I think that's, not a good idea. So we found a specialist that was just right up the street. And he said, they're not going to do the right kind of testing. So, and you don't want to get a bone marrow biopsy twice, which no.
It's interesting here because it seems like she's saying that the Cedars-Sinai expert has said that drug choices aren't based on genetics. So I guess another option would be to get a second opinion, to always look at a second opinion there.
Yeah, sometimes, like, I don't know, the thinking around genomics has evolved a lot in myeloma over 10 years. And now you can, it's true, you just should hit things more aggressively. Like what Todd was saying, you might use a quad at instead of 3 drugs, you might add daratumumab to RVD or something like that. Or you might want to do, if you have high risk myeloma, you probably don't want to be on a single maintenance therapy. You might want to be on Revlimid and something else, and Dara and Velcade or something like that, if you can tolerate the side effects. So like I feel like this is a chess game that we're playing, with our lives. And so we have to be as educated as possible about what we personally are dealing with. You may have very low risk myeloma. And so let's say you go on treatment and then you get off and, but you have low risk myeloma and you're MRD negative. Well, you might want to talk to your doctor after 2 or 3 years and go, okay, can I get off maintenance therapy? But if you have high risk myeloma, you shouldn't do that. You should stay on therapy. So yeah, sorry, I'm really opinionated.
I'll take personal responsibility for amping Jenny up here. So I'm sorry.
We love your heart, Jenny. We know what you're speaking.
Is it the FISH test then? There's a follow-up question. Is it the FISH test that reveals genomics, or is that a separate test?
Yeah, that's the most commonly done basic genetics test. And they'll run a panel. So the FISH test is, if you don't test for it, you're not finding an answer. So they have to run the right panel for the test. And usually there's like a myeloma panel where they'll be looking for the 414 and the deletion 17 and stuff like that. But if you read your FISH test and they didn't run the panel, well, they might not find the genetic features. So just kind of look over that. If you need help, we have a whole team that can help you understand your FISH test and what do these genetics mean? Because sometimes they're really confusing to read. And it looks like you have these features, but it's just they ran the panel. And then lower, you gotta go down to the bottom and see the actual results of what you have or don't have. So yeah, and you should get it at diagnosis when you have disease. If you're in remission, you have no myeloma cells to test, right? So there are not enough cells to test. But at relapse, remission, anytime you relapse, get it done again.
Awesome.
Amira says, I thought FISH tests were standard, and I think that's the surprise in all of this is how frequently they're not. And even if they have been done, how patients might even not know what their risk profile is. And I think it's not only important that the test is done, but the patient actually knows what their status is.
Yeah.
And in just a moment, in a couple slides, for those that want to get more information on this, and in this slide deck that you'll get later, it's the link to the content in HealthTree University that runs through about 12 different videos from experts on what you need to know and why you need to know it about genetic testing. So there's a good action item there. The other thing I was going to say is I love this open forum type setup because we could be sitting in a meeting room at some, hospital having this very similar conversation, but we're able to do it. And I'm looking at you on the screens and I feel like we're actually together, even though we're just together virtually. So thank you for the interaction during that open forum part. And we're watching the questions that are coming in. We probably can't get to all of them, but we'll continue to monitor that. And I think maybe we can move to the next section. Does that work?
Yeah. And if you did have your hand raised, there will be more open forums throughout this. to share. So please don't feel like we're ignoring you. We will come back to you in the future.
That's right. So our goal is started in that chapter is to really inspire both hope and action, and as a chapter, we're going to share and exchange these clinical insights, the high impact resources and events. And in a few moments, we're going to open up lines again. But before I open it back up again, I want to kick things off with a few slides and this action around some of the clinical news. In the spirit of hope, I offer this perspective from a Health Tree University, and this one features Dr. Rafael Fonseca from Mayo Clinic in Scottsdale.
If you ask me, are there patients out there that can complete treatment and never again require treatment? The answer is yes. Would some people consider those patients cured? The answer is yes. When we look at old studies, particularly there's a study from Spain that looked at very long-term outcomes after stem cell transplant. How long? 20 years. They found that a third of those patients who achieved a complete response by the criteria that was used back then did not relapse. Essentially, they were functionally cured. Of course, we all want to get to the cure. That means you take pills or you take injections for a short period of time, and you never again have to deal with multiple myeloma, at least in a majority of patients. We might be getting closer, and I hope that's in the future. It depends on how you define it, but there's definitely a group of patients that only require one intensive phase of treatment. Anyone who's watching this and who's a myeloma patient should remember something very, very important. If you get 8 to 10 years of disease control, the treatments for myeloma 8 to 10 years from now will be radically different from what we're doing today. That's something that economists call the value of options, meaning you will have options that you don't have today just because the clinical research has been done during that period of time. A great example for this is what happened with folks in the HIV and AIDS epidemic. Some of the individuals who could stay on treatment just enough so that they could see the next line of treatment are still alive today because of that innovation.
Hang on, I'm going back to my slides here. It's coming up.
Let me just say, I love that video because it gives me so much hope. And I love that he says the value of options. I've talked with myeloma patients that were diagnosed 15 years ago, and they say that same thing is, I'm so glad I've lived to see these new innovations and these new treatments that are out there.
I've watched probably at least 30, maybe 40 Health Tree University videos, and that one really hit home for me. And I think about that all the time. Because when you think about, we had people that were on here, and we saw in the Cure Hub database people that have been living with myeloma for 10 plus years. And you think about the treatment options that were available 5 years ago, and there's some significant innovation. But if you look forward to what's on the horizon with CAR T, BiTEs, other targets, many of the experts believe that cures are coming, and with that research pipeline in mind, I am absolutely convinced, and I look forward to the day that Dr. Krishnan is going to tell me and Diane that my myeloma is cured. And I know that's going to happen, but I also know that that's why we talk about hope, because you can be hopeful, but you also have to take action. You got to believe it's going to happen. You got to hang in there, stay positive, healthy, informed, and connected, and do whatever you can to make these cures happen sooner. Accelerate the arrival of those cures. I showed those 5 steps that were in that early slide I showed that can help accelerate the cures. And you can donate your data, to registries like Cure Hub. Cure Cloud from the MMRF is a great example of how to donate your data and accelerate the arrival of cures, and give serious consideration to clinical trials that might be right for you. I did a quick survey of clinicaltrials.gov, which is where all the clinical trials in the country are posted. Within 300 miles of Los Angeles, there are 77 myeloma studies currently recruiting. And there are 61 studies currently active. Many of them are in those centers that you saw at the top of that list, but many of them are also in community oncology locations as well. And I know there's a lot of discussion of whether or not you want to be in a clinical trial, but that does give you access to the future. And if anything we can do to accelerate the arrival of the cures, that's going to help me. It's going to help you. It's going to help our community around the world with this disease. So I'm very, very hopeful, especially when I think about how myeloma care will be transformed in the future. And then another thing on the clinical news front, we asked a question around COVID. Of course, it's on everybody's mind. I don't want to have our open forum dominated by COVID questions, but go back there. I only put this one out. Here's a link that was an article written by Greg from Myeloma Crowd regarding the IMS guidance on COVID vaccinations. There's also NCCN guidance. And the important thing is really just to talk to your doctor about if and when, and they'll probably say, yes, you should. But they might also have some thoughts regarding some need to maybe adjust timing of some of your other myeloma treatments. So I'm not getting into that, not providing any advice or recommendations, just the link is there. And the encouragement is, if you haven't already, have a conversation with your doctor about the topic. I think most of the people in that survey said that they are already down that path. And also, if you have questions and you want a deep dive, the IMF does have a webinar on Saturday morning at 7 a.m. and it's got Dr. Dewey, it's got Dr. Richardson, and it's going to be a terrific, I should think, opportunity to go even deeper on that topic. The LLS has a national patient registry, since many of the trials don't include immunocompromised patients like us. This is a great way for you to get your data in there so we can get an idea of what the COVID situation pre and post vaccine looks like in the myeloma population. You can go right onto LLS and get there. And then one other clinical one, there's so many Myeloma Crowd, great content. And I love Jenny's Myeloma Crowd radio ones. And I only throw this one out there because it's one of my absolute favorites. And it's a Myeloma Crowd radio one too. So you could turn it on in your car or when you're walking on your listening to your headphones. This What's Coming in 2021 with Dr. Orlowski is terrific. If you want to be inspired about the future of research and where things are going, I would highly recommend you listen to that particular Myeloma Crowd radio episode. A couple more quick ones. We already talked about genetics. I only included this here because it shows what that link is. And this is not the entire list of sections on myeloma genetics, but these are very, very helpful sections on what is it, what's the purpose of doing it, why is it important, which ones matter, etc. So really recommend that if you have questions here, or even if you just want to understand it even more deeply, click on those Health Tree University sections. Same story on MRD. There's a lot of questions regarding MRD. Do I need it? What's the value of MRD? And you can see some of these titles here. I know it's small, and this isn't the full list. There's about 12 of them in the MRD chapter in Health Tree University. But what is it? Why is it useful? When do you get it done? How can it be used as a prognostic tool, etc.? So again, Health Tree University is so, so valuable. And then again, we said we want to try and make sure that everybody in the community is aware of all the events. So here's a quick view of just the remainder of March and some of the great programs that are being offered in our community. Of course, you by being involved in this one, you're enjoying some of the community event chapters. There are other ones, a caregiver chapter. This is a national one. Another one that's focused on Health Tree Cure Hub and the patient solutions aspect of Cure Hub. There are newly diagnosed chapters. There is a Selinexor group, the plasma cell leukemia group, an African American group. And then also coming up on March 20th is one of those terrific interactive Myeloma Crowd roundtable events. That one, you need to jump on that one if you can make it. It's decision-making for relapsed refractory. And that's always something, even though you might be in remission, it's good to be able to think about, well, what might I need to be making decisions around if at some point in my journey, I'm at that inflection point. And then finally, March is Myeloma Action Month. So Muscles for Myeloma is a great program to get in there, participate, focus on fitness, encourage each other, and win prizes.
Let me just add to that super fast, Todd. So we will be sending out these slides and we will be sending out the links so that you're able to register for any of these events if they interest you. And I do want to give a special shout out to Linda. She's on the call today. She's going to be our featured speaker for that caregiver event. Patients could attend that event as well because it is about caregiver and patient conflict. Linda's a marriage and family therapist, and so she's able to give us a unique perspective of how to solve that conflict. So I just wanted to put that little plug in and let you know that you don't have to be frantically taking notes because we will be sending out this recording and these slides via email.
Thanks, Audrey. I think it's important too. I know when I was newly diagnosed and trying to get up to speed, I turned to Myeloma Crowd, and I'm so grateful for all the great content. But I also did find I got a lot of helpful information from some other trustworthy sources like the IMF and the MMRF, just two that really stand out in my mind. And they have events all the time as well. So here are the links to those programs. And I think as a SoCal community, it's important that we're thinking about what's happening across the whole landscape. So that's why we're sharing them here. I even included the link there for the local support groups. As I mentioned, if you go on that link, you'll see that there are about 13 different groups listed in our 11 counties. And go on there. If you want to go to a live meeting or get connected with one of those, if you've never done it, I would say go there, see what's offered, see what day of the week it is or where the location is. If it's convenient, check it out. If you checked it out before and you haven't recently, check it out again. But get connected in the ways that work best.
Most of those are virtual right now, but we'll be transitioning back to live.
Yep. And I already mentioned the upcoming IMF seminar on Saturday morning. The MMRF has got some great things as well. Cure Cloud, if you don't know about Cure Cloud, I would highly recommend you get up to speed on what that's all about. And the MMRF also has a program that's focused on fitness and getting everybody moving and rallying behind accelerating arrival of the cure through a fitness-based campaign. I'm going to turn it over back to open forum in just a minute, but what I'd like to do is tell you what we're envisioning for future chapter meetings. So this one was set up to kind of tell you a little bit more about the rationale and why we think there's a need for this type of engagement. We'll do a little of that sell-in, I think, down the road as people are getting more and more aware of it. Please do, if you found this valuable, share it with your network of other friends, patients, your oncology center or your doctor, and say, you know what, that actually worked, and get other people involved. But we will also include guest speakers, regional and national experts, not only in myeloma, but also in supportive care. Again, as I already mentioned, our focus will be on both caregiver and patient support. And I think I always find in like Jenny's Myeloma Crowd roundtable events, the interactive Q&A is invaluable. To think about the opportunity to ask questions from some of these brilliant minds for free is incredible. So it's our hope that we can include those interactive Q&A sessions, and that will be a draw to get you to continue to engage in these type of events. In addition, when you think about how many myeloma patients there are, it's quite possible we'll have a very large group connected in these virtual sessions. So what we envision if we get above like 50 or more people in one of these meetings, we'll move towards some breakout rooms where a portion of the session will be through Google Meets is pretty extraordinary. We can have 50 people on, and we have 37 on now that are watching the content all at the same time, but we will take a portion of our meeting and be able to have you go to a separate kind of, you don't even have to leave the meeting, you'll just automatically be assigned to a different content section that could be in a topic or in a group that's similar to your interest. So maybe it's you identify as you're newly diagnosed, there'll be the 10 people on this call that are all newly diagnosed, and you'll meet some of those people that are kind of walking in your same shoes at this point in time that you can have a conversation with. And there might be people that are high risk genetics. There might be younger people. We'll break it out into different groups so that you're going to get a very, hopefully, interactive experience, and sometimes maybe even more interactive than you would get at a live meeting when there's a lot of people in the room. And then we'll hopefully be able to use this technology for some interactive tutorials, like on the HealthTree Cure Hub. So that's a little sneak preview, hopefully, of where we might be able to take this. I think we've all, through COVID, another one of the silver linings is we've all become better at how to connect virtually and try to make it as personal as possible. And we're trying to really capitalize on that positive side of what we've just went through in the last year. So hopefully you'll continue to join us on that journey. At this point, again, I want to turn it open to an open forum. And this is just, again, your chance to share highlights from your experience, from your local group or your cancer center. If there's a resource that you found particularly helpful, I saw some people posted some of those in the chat, which is great. So we can maybe go back into there and say, these are some of the things that people were suggesting. If you're aware of, if there's some opportunity for advocacy or a local fundraising event and you want more people to know about it in our myeloma community, this is the forum where we'll be able to exchange information across the area. So it's wide open. You can raise your hand, chat it in, and we'll open things up for the next 8 or so minutes.
Thank you, Todd. So we had Glinda who was raising her hand. Glinda, if you want to unmute and share what you were going to say earlier, now is the time. And just a casual reminder that to unmute your microphone, you move your mouse to the bottom of the screen and a bar should pop up. You can click the microphone button, or if you're on your phone, just tap the screen and click the microphone button and that should unmute you. So if Glinda is still here with us, Glinda, you're welcome to speak. And if not, we can move on. All right, so we have Orange County MSG, which I think is Jackie. So if you want to unmute your microphone.
Hi, it is me. I'm sorry, I don't know why it says
okay.
I did this from my personal email, so I have no clue. But that's me. I'm technically, Anyway, Diane and Todd, thank you so much for a great presentation. I put this in the chat room because it is when you see, Todd, that there are 1,400 people who are newly diagnosed, that immediately concerns me. So my thought was, how do we work on solving that issue? Once a person knows about these organizations, then it's fantastic, but how do we get them to know about the organizations? How do we coordinate as organizations to help newly diagnosed patients? And to be honest, I don't know about you, Todd, but when I went to City of Hope, no one came to me and said, you're newly diagnosed, you're overwhelmed, let me give you some resources to help you. I might not have taken those resources right away, but it would have been wonderful to have them. It took me quite a while to learn about Myeloma Crowd, IMF. I just felt overwhelmed.
I think you're right. That's the thing that hits me. It just almost kills me to know that 1,400 people are hearing that same horrible news. Every single person that's a patient and a caregiver on this call remembers that moment that they heard you have cancer. And then they also remember they heard I have myeloma and they didn't even know what that was. Right. And I'm with you, Jackie, because when I saw that, and I think there are great organizations out there, but then I realized people don't know about it. And so I'm 100% with you. We got to figure out ways to work with the individual oncology offices, with the cancer centers, to be passionate about, that's why we're trying to make sure that we've got coaches in every county, that we've got and coaches that are linked back to all of the key centers so that they are ambassadors, not only for the Health Tree Foundation, but for the IMF and the MMRF and others. And they're telling these centers and their resource centers and their oncology leaders that, hey, we patients, we need help. Because I think that goes back to that comment that I was pointing in there. It says those doctors are only thinking about what's the matter with the patient. They're thinking about what's the diagnosis and what's the treatment. They're not thinking about what matters to the patient. And what matters to the patient is understanding this stuff. Understanding not only the disease, but understanding everything that goes with living with it, navigating the financial waters, navigating insurance challenges, navigating the psychosocial stuff. And they just don't know. So I'm very much, it is part of our mission as a group to brainstorm on this topic on how do we reach these people.
Todd and I always give his doctor, our cards from Myeloma Crowd for Coaching. And then we've learned that the nurses are actually much better at communicating these things. And so we've give the nurses that he normally sees the same ones, and he has given them both our cards as well as information about tonight. And they know we spoke last night for over an hour to some newly diagnosed patients that were had been at City of Hope Duarte, and the nurse practitioner had said, you seem overwhelmed. Why don't you talk to a patient and caregiver? And so we spent an hour with them on the phone last night. So I do think being proactive on our end can help the fellow people that are being diagnosed.
Thank you. Yes.
I like Renuka's Baldwin's idea. Let's come up with a comprehensive list, and then let's hand it to and make a concerted effort to give it to the oncology clinics. And so here's the list, guys.
Yeah.
You should give this to your patients when they're newly diagnosed, and here are groups in your geography or somewhere else with your specialty that we're interested in helping you out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a huge need. Huge need. Thank you for bringing that up, Jackie. We are very much on the same page. We need to figure these things out.
Definitely.
Paul, I see you shared some info on the COVID myeloma study in HealthTree. That's awesome too. I didn't bring that one up in my slide. I have filled that survey out myself, and I'm hoping others will.
Yeah, this one, there's two phases to it. The phase one overfilled in 3 weeks. There's way over 1,000 patients in it. And they've been able to capture all of the records from all of the patients that have participated in that study, plus the survey information, validated, all the records are validated by doctors. And now they started the phase 2 of that study. And there's no cost to the patient. So there's a lot of people that had interest. We filled 1,300 in about 4 or 5 weeks. So it's like a record fill on in a study.
That's great.
So we have another question. It's from Sam. He says, is Myeloma Crowd able or has resources to help patients access new blood tests? And I'm not exactly sure what that means. If Sam is here, he can unmute and maybe explain the question a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
We can.
Yeah. Thanks for arranging this meeting. I'm Sam, 35 years old from San Diego. I sent the link in the chat box. There is a new test or new clinical trial by University of Chicago, Dr. Berman, where they showed their mass spec test is more accurate than NGS MRD. It's the second figure in that link that I sent you. Some patients who were negative on the NGS MRD, they relapsed, but none of the patients on their test relapsed. So it's kind of quite accurate in the 6 years. So my story is that I'm starting my treatment, and I didn't want to go through I was hoping that I can use it as kind of guiding my therapy to go for a stem cell for my personal reasons, my personal challenges that I have. And I didn't know, I kind of felt powerless. How can I gonna get access to this type of test where it's in the specific center, like University of Chicago or New York? And I didn't know. I thought maybe IMF or Myeloma Crowd have resources to make that available sooner to the patients like myself.
Yeah,
that was basically my question. Sorry for the long spiel, but
well, Todd, can I answer this one?
Yeah.
This is what we did for Jenny. We went into the clinic, and there were new tests that were out that the hospital hadn't done before and didn't know about. And so we sat there in the hospital, and these have to be ordered through your doctor. So first of all, it's got to be done in the hospital through your doctor.
And I don't think mass spec is out yet. Mass spec is still in research studies. It's not readily available that I know of. I know Dana Farber's working on another one too. But But yeah, you can. So like for the NGS test, I mean, I was in my bone marrow biopsy and like, I want that test.
And so we had them
And
stop. They went and researched it. We found the paperwork. They put the application in. They did an extra pull just in case we could get in. We talked to financial assistants. They went out and did their homework, and they had a poll there waiting for us. And anyways, it was a little bit of drama, but
I had to be a little pushy.
yes.
Because I'm like, do you know about this test? Yeah, we can give you that test. Like, well, can I get this test?
Well, you know how much it is? Well, we'll figure it out.
I'm
And
like,
so,
go call them and ask them how much the test is.
so you have to go with your doctor and be a little pushy for those tests, and they will do it. But you have to be your own advocate in this one.
Mass spec, I don't know about yet because I don't know if it's open yet.
The mass spec by the Mayo has been approved and is available. It's called like MALDI, but this one is another mass spec technique called like liquid chromatography. But yeah, thanks for your advice. Thanks for your help.
Yeah.
Thanks for your comments there, Sam. It looks like Steve Allen has a question or has his hand up.
Yeah, Sam, was your question, can I use this blood test out of Chicago as an alternative to having a bone marrow biopsy? Was that your question?
Sam, I think he's asking you if you want to.
Oh, so yeah, I contacted Dr. Berman at the University of Chicago. Right now, it's just for the trial patient, but the MSK Center, the Memorial Sloan Center in New York, they're also bringing that test apparently in April. And once it gets approved, they will give you a CDC code. But apparently right now, it's not available outside the clinical trial. But there's a test with a similar power called MALDI that the Mayo offers.
Yeah, that's my understanding. I participated in an IMF webinar a few weeks ago, and this subject was discussed because obviously, bone marrow biopsies are unpleasant even if you do them under anesthesia. And they said that this blood test was still being trialed, and it wasn't yet the definitive test remained the biopsy to measure MRD. That was the definitive test. They were hopeful that soon there would be approval for this alternative, the liquid biopsy blood test, but it isn't yet approved, and therefore, if your goal is to understand where you are with respect to MRD, the approved test, unfortunately, remains the biopsy.
That's right. I said the link, I can send it again. You guys can see it in the figure that will explain these different techniques. But yeah, as of now, again, it's in the clinical trial toward the end. But some centers are bringing it. Yeah, hopefully if I get any updates, I will try to share this in this forum.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Steve, for speaking up and joining tonight. When Diane mentioned when we were newly diagnosed and trying to find our way, it was Steve who I met in the hallway at City of Hope in Duarte and gave me the encouragement, and Diane the encouragement as being somebody that was further along. So this is kind of payback for what you gave to us, Steve. So thanks for joining and for what you've done. And
well, congratulations to you and Diane for doing so much for the community of myeloma patients and their caregivers. So congratulations.
We got to stick together if we want to see that cure, and it's going to happen.
Indeed. Yeah, we're all going to live long enough to see the day when this disease is conquered. So
that's going to be a party.
Yeah.
Hey, well, we're at the top of the hour, and everybody's time is so precious. So I think we're going to move to wrap things up. Does that sound all right? As much as I'd love to keep this going. And so our next meeting is a month away on April 13th. If you've got questions and or feedback, we would love to hear from you. And I really do appreciate, and I know we all appreciate the interactive nature of this, and thank you for being on board. Audrey, would you like to thank our sponsors and turn us into the mingle there?
Of course. So just as an outro, again, we'd like to give a special thanks to our community event sponsors without whom this would not be possible. We have Bristol Myers Squibb, Amgen Oncology, Karyopharm Therapeutics, AbbVie, Adaptive Biotechnologies, Genentech, Oncopeptides, and Takeda Oncology. And at this time, we want to thank you especially for helping us build this myeloma community. It's how we're going to get to a cure, is by collaborating together, talking together. And again, a big, big, big thank you. Todd and Diane put in so many hours to make this such an amazing presentation. And I feel like you guys did it so well, so incredible. So thank you so much, Todd and Diane. At this time, we're going to stop recording. And those who would like to just mingle, we're going to stop screen sharing, and you're welcome to turn on your microphones and we can just chat together. So if you want to sign off, you can sign off. If you want to stay, you can stay. But we appreciate you and thank you for helping us build this myeloma community together.
Thanks, Audrey.